Hi there, this is Jack from the Spitfire Audio Customer Experience team. In this video today, I'm going to be demonstrating the user interface controls on the Spitfire Audio plugin Abbey Road 1. At the very top of the plugin, we have the top menu, which gives us a little bit of information in the top left-hand corner about our system performance, for example, CPU. If this goes to 70-80%, I would start looking at ways of optimizing your processor. The disk meter gives us information about the streaming performance of your samples. So if this goes to 70-80% or you get dropouts, I would suggest looking at optimizing your samples hard drive. We then have the memory option, which details how much sample content is loaded into your RAM. And we have the voices option, which allows us to see how many current voices we're triggering when playing. The refresh icon to the right of this allows us to refresh the plugin should any notes become stuck when computers sometimes glitch. We then have the MIDI channel option, which, because this plugin is not multi-timbral, I suggest leaving this to any. We have master tune for the plugin, and we also have pan controls to the right of this, as well as a master volume. In the top right hand corner, we also have two settings menus. Moving down the plugin, we have the preset menu bar. To the left of the preset menu bar, we have a drop-down menu which allows you to open it up. Here we can scroll through the different presets. We can favorite a preset, which would then show up in the starred filter on the left-hand side. We can clear the filters by using the clear button at the top. We've also provided some standard filters, which allows you to filter via orchestral section. You can also preview any sound. And to the right hand side, there's an information icon where we can learn a little bit more about what that sound does. To the right of the preset menu, we have the two arrows, which allows us to cycle through the different presets. We also have a save icon, which allows us to save our own user presets when we've customized the plugin how we like. Once you've created a custom user preset, that will show up under the users filter. We then have an option to show the plugin as collapsed or expanded. Moving below the preset bar, we have the main controls. So to the left, we have expression. Expression operates as a volume control within the master volume. So if I were to hold down some notes, when this gets to 0, it's completely cut out. This doesn't change the timbre of your sound, it's simply volume. The middle fader is for dynamics, which allows us to cycle between the different dynamic layers. Please note, for shorter articulations, these will respond to velocity unless you change the dynamics fader preferences in the top right hand corner. The knob control has a variety of different options depending on which patch is selected. By default, it shows us reverb, but we also have a tightness control. When turned to the right, this eats into the sample start times, which means if you're quantizing data to your DAW grids, turning this up will make things a little bit more responsive. However, the further you turn this up, it will become less natural. The vibrato control allows us to cycle between a vib sound and a non-vib sound. The release option, when increased, allows us to extend the ends of the notes slightly, and this will allow us to blur phrases more together. Moving further down the plugin menus, we have 3 different pages at the bottom. The first of these 3 different pages is the techniques browser. Here we can see the different articulations loaded for a patch. We can change those by clicking. If you were to hold shift and click, you can then stack the different articulations on top of each other. To unstack an articulation, simply click any other. To the right of the techniques, we have the technique editor. So here we have a similar version of our preset browser where we can preview a sound and also learn more about that sound. We have a filter system, so we can filter through the articulations a lot quicker. And we have the articulation arranger on the right hand side where we can drag different articulations around to change the key switching order, for example, or we can simply remove these articulations to create custom presets. To the right of the articulations, we have the key switching methods. So for example, we have the triggers. So this allows us to change which type of key switching this particular articulation will respond to. If you, for example, set this to be CC range, if you're a UACC user, you would have to change this per articulation, like so, and changing in the particular values as needed. Moving back to a normal key switching method, we then have the key switching options. This allows us to set the range in which the trigger responds to. The range of the key switches is then shown in the bottom left-hand corner of the keyboard. You can change the range by using the shimmier in the top right-hand corner to click and drag. The active mode allows you to choose between a normal state of key switching and also a latching state of key switching. When changing to a short articulation, the round robin options become available. Here we can limit the number of round robins that are triggered via that particular articulation. The reset on transport function should be left on, and what this means is it means every time you hit play in your DAW, it will start from the same identical round robin. This allows you to have a more consistent sonic performance. The reset from key allows you to place key switches on your keyboard to reset the different round robin options. Because there's 5 round robins on this patch, I have 5 different key switches. So if I set the 5th key switch on the keyboard, we trigger the 5th round robin the next time we play. This goes for the first key, for example. If I press the first key, we will then re-trigger the first round robin when we play. The round robin options allow us to stack more round robins up into our performance by borrowing them from a neighbouring zone. We can then layer up the different round robins for a thicker sound as well. There's more information about this in the user manual. We then have a transpose function which allows us to change the playable range. Moving to the next menu, we have the microphone mixer or the signal mixer. In the top left-hand corner of the signal mixer, we have the save presets. If you save a microphone preset, you can then load that preset no matter which instance of Abbey Road 1 you have loaded. If you have a custom setup which you're no longer happy with and want to go to the default state, you can then use the refresh icon. The advanced view when turned off gives us a simple view of the microphone. So if I was to drag this to close and then change this, you can see that all the mixes have been unloaded apart from the close microphone. The global option allows us to set custom microphone mixes depending on which articulation is selected. So for example, if I was to now change the articulation back to long, you'll notice that my microphone mix has now gone back to the close, and I can dial in a custom microphone mix which is different to the spiccato which I had selected before. You can unload any microphone mix by simply clicking and dragging, or you can use these little toggles at the bottom. Above the enable and disable toggles, we have the stereo options. Now these allow us to route the microphone signals out of a different stereo output of the plugin. This is really useful if you want different control over a microphone for mixing. For example, in a 5.1 system, you might want to route the ambient microphones to stereo 2 and then route the return of stereo 2 in your DAW to the surrounds in your studio. A new feature for Abbey Road 1 is the grouping functionality of the microphones. There are 4 groups, so if I enable group A, which is the 2 mixes, and I decide that I don't want this, when I then introduce a microphone from another group, for example the vintage group, these 2 microphones become disabled. There's more information about the groupings in the user manual. To the right hand side we have a stereo width control for the close and spot signals, as well as a panner control, and we can also invert the left and right signals. In the top right hand corner of all these menus we have the padlock option, which allows us to lock any changes in place so we can't change them. The FX page is an overall view of what we see on the knob control. Moving up to the top menu, in the first settings icon, we have a number of different options. The first one is the dynamics option, and what this allows us to do is it allows us to set a different behavior for the dynamics fader. So if I was to change this to velocity mapped dynamics, for example, this now means anytime I use a short articulation, the dynamics of the short articulation will no longer respond to velocity, but respond to the dynamics fader instead. The velocity control allows us to set the behavior of how the plugin will respond to how hard you hit the keys. So for example, by default, this is a linear velocity, but if I change this to exponential positive, you can hit the keys a lot softer for a louder and stronger response from the plugin. You then have the reset the CC mappings. So for example, if you create custom CC mappings, maybe you set dynamics to be CC127, by resetting and clearing, you clear your custom CC mappings and reset them to the defaults. So the dynamics fader will become CC number 1. The short releases allow us to set a timed and untimed option for the release triggers in the library. What this means is it means if you set a timed release for the release triggers, you'll cut off the end of the sample when the release trigger kicks in. This is set to 300 milliseconds for the note on, note off duration. You can then have a untimed option where this behavior is not limited to time. The sync to tempo option isn't available for this library. To the right hand side, we have the more advanced settings for the interface, the audio settings, where we can optimize the plugin. I would recommend reading the manual for these particular settings because we go into much more detail there. If you do have any further questions, please get in touch with us at spitfireaudio.com/support. Thanks.